From the Detroit Free Press, it's Friday, June 18th. Here are today's top stories. Presented by Bush's Fresh Food Market. Bush's has over 4,000 Michigan products, including the freshest fruit and vegetables, meat, seafood, and baked goods. Stop by one of Bush's 16 locations for the personal service you expect from your neighborhood grocer.
I'm Dave Boucher with the Detroit Free Press. The COVID-19 pandemic isn't over, but Michigan's health and safety orders soon will be. Governor Gretchen Whitmer announced Thursday the state will rescind the vast majority of remaining mandates next week, about 10 days ahead of schedule. That includes rules limiting capacity in stores and restaurants and requiring masks in many circumstances. Whitmer said, quote, "Today is a day that we have been all looking forward to as we can safely get back to normal day-to-day activities and put this pandemic behind us." She added, quote, "Our top priority going forward is utilizing federal relief funding in a smart, sustainable way as we put Michigan back to work and jumpstart our economy." Several rules for prisons, long-term care facilities, and agricultural workers will remain in effect. The state will release additional guidance for schools next week as well. Whitmer already rolled back many rules at the start of the month as COVID-19 case rates, hospitalizations, and deaths continued to improve. But Thursday's announcement marks a major milestone in the fight against an epidemic that has claimed the lives of more than 19,500 Michiganders. Since the start of the pandemic in spring 2020, Michigan has operated under at least a few health and safety orders. Generally, the severity of those orders corresponded with any surge in cases and deaths. However, Whitmer and Department of Health and Human Services Director Elizabeth Hertel declined to institute new orders earlier this spring, despite pandemic trends that pushed Michigan to become the worst hotspot in the nation. Critics have largely called for Whitmer to roll back these regulations sooner. The governor previously tied easing regulations to vaccination rates, but updated CDC guidance on mask wearing essentially scuttled that plan. Even though mask mandates and capacity limits are essentially gone, the coronavirus remains. Health and safety experts continue to urge anyone 12 and older to get vaccinated.
For the Detroit Free Press, I'm Kristen Seamus, with news that could change the healthcare landscape in Michigan. Two of the state's largest health systems, Beaumont and Spectrum Health, announced Thursday they have signed a letter of intent to merge. Beaumont and Spectrum leaders say together they'll create an entirely new health system that will be Michigan's largest. It will employ 64,000 people, include 22 hospitals, and 305 outpatient sites that span most of the Lower Peninsula. Together, they'll have a net revenue of $12.9 billion. Temporarily called BHSH System, it'll get a new name if it passes regulatory approval, and it will be led by Spectrum Health's Tina Fries-Decker. Beaumont President and CEO John Fox will leave the organization once it's established. Because the range of health systems doesn't overlap, Fries-Decker told the Free Press there aren't likely to be hospital closures or job losses. The hope, she said, is to complete the deal in the fall. To learn more, go to freep.com.
This is Brian McCollum, music writer with the Detroit Free Press. 15 years after the last new music from Diana Ross, the Motown superstar is back. Ross greeted fans early Thursday with a positive-themed, throwback-sounding single titled Thank You, while announcing she's got an album with that same name coming this fall. It's the first new material from the Detroit-born singer and former Supreme since 2006's I Love You. The new album pairs Ross with a host of in-demand songwriters and producers of the moment, including Jack Antonoff, best known for his work with Taylor Swift and Lana Del Rey, along with Spike Stent and Amy Wadge, who have collaborated closely with Ed Sheeran. Universal Music said Ross recorded the new record in her home studio, describing the album as an inclusive message of love and togetherness. For her part, Ross said in a statement that, quote, "As you hear my voice, you hear my heart." The 13-track album will be Ross's first with Decca Records. The exact autumn release date hasn't been announced.
I'm Andrew Hammond for the Free Press Sports Department. Is it time for the University of Michigan to move on from perhaps its most iconic figure, former football head coach Bo Schembechler? After a second week of former players publicly coming out against the former coach and his negligence when it came to response of abuse allegations by former Michigan doctor Robert Anderson, Sunday's edition of the Detroit Free Press begs that question. Education reporter John Wisely approaches the subject that many Michigan faculty, alums, and fans are not ready to discuss, but can't ignore it any longer. There is a generational divide in which some students are ready to remove the Schembechler statue and rename the building because of what he represents now, not what he represents in the past. Then you have some people that are Michigan loyalists. They don't think anything should happen to the ultimate Michigan man. Ultimately, the biggest question remains, where does Michigan go from here? Because this story is certainly not going away.
For more stories from the Detroit Free Press, be sure to check out freep.com. That's FREEP.com. If you're a fan and want to support our quality local journalism, subscribe. Go to freep.com/special offer.